So, no, I wouldn't say I have a passion for HR.
Welcome back to Human Resources for the People. It's a human capital revolution. Late last month, Google fired about 50 employees for protesting its cloud contract with the Israeli government. Now, those employees have come back and filed an unfair labor practice charge, and we've got to talk about this today. So we're going to go over a brief timeline of events and then discuss what a unfair labor practice charge actually is, then go through a short background on political ULPs, which is really relevant to this discussion, as well as a resolution and what it looks like in the future. So let's get right into that background. Back in 2021, Google signed a contract with the Israeli government, specifically the Israeli military, and they called it Project Nimbus. It was a $1.2 billion deal that Google and Amazon Web Services signed, which would provide cloud computing and AI technology for Israel. Activists and academics have been upset by Israel's use of AI, which the idea is to target Palestinians. Legal scholars are saying that the use of AI in war might actually violate international laws. And so ultimately, there's been a group called No Tech for Apartheid, which has worked together. They are a group of employees with Google, inside Google, who has this ongoing campaign. Now, the No Tech for Apartheid group says that they have about 1,000 Google and Amazon workers who are rising up against this contract, Project Nimbus. Tech for Apartheid says that they're pushing for divestment, just like people who pushed for divestment from apartheid South Africa. Says it's their responsibility to rise up in support of Palestinian freedom. So they planned a No Tech for Genocide Day of action on April 16th. It was to take place in New York City, Sunnyvale, Seattle. And what's important to discuss here is that these employees are not unionized. They are simply a group of employees. Some are potentially management, some are not. But ultimately, they are working against this Project Nimbus. On April 16th, it's not exactly clear what happened. Many of the employees, quote, physically disrupted the workplace. They did, for example, Mohammed Khatami, who was a Google software engineer, was arrested for participating in the sit-in in New York. There was at least some occupation of CEO of Google Cloud, Thomas Kurian's office. So they occupied these various offices, and ultimately Google then fired about 30 of them. Apparently, some of them were not actually actively part of the sit-ins. I think that is an important note. And this is according to one of those who was fired, Zelda Montez. Subsequent to this termination, this group of employees then filed a complaint with the United States National Labor Relations Board, saying that Google interfered with the rights under United States labor law to advocate for better working conditions. And specifically, they filed an unfair labor practice charge. So let's talk about what the unfair labor practice charge is. An unfair labor practice charge filed with the National Labor Relations Board, or NLRB, typically alleges violations of the National Labor Relations Act, NLRA, by either employers or labor unions. These charges could involve actions such as interference with employees' rights to engage in concerted activities for mutual aid or protection, discrimination against employees for their union activities, refusal to bargain collectively in good faith, or retaliation against employees for exercising their rights under the National Labor Relations Act. Upon receiving a charge, the National Labor Relations Board investigates the allegations, which may include conducting interviews, reviewing documents, and holding hearings. If the NLRB finds merit in the charge, it may issue a complaint against the accused party, leading to a formal legal proceeding before an administrative law judge. Remedies for unfair labor practices can include cease and desist orders, reinstatement of terminated employees, back pay awards, and posting notices to inform employees of their rights under the National Labor Relations Act. And the back pay and reinstatement of terminated employees appears to be what Zelda Montez and their group is looking for with this filing. There is actually some interesting case law on this, and some of it actually happened quite recently. On February 21st of 2024, there was Home Depot USA versus Morales. In this one, Home Depot was decided to have been violating the NLRA when Home Depot required an employee to remove a Black Lives Matter symbol from his orange apron that he worked at the workplace. And the NLRB at the time said that, quote, it was a logical outgrowth or continuation of prior or ongoing protected activity because The National Labor Relations Act does apply to both union and non-union workplaces, even though that many consider that the NLRA is solely union workplace. And so this is a scenario where this was not related to a union at all, but because Home Depot had requested Morales to remove it, that ultimately, and that the group had concerns with respect to ongoing occurrences of racial discrimination in the store, this ultimately was Section 7 protected activity. Concerted activity refers to collective actions taken by employees to address or improve their terms and conditions of employment. Typically involves two or more employees acting together to address workplace issues such as work wages, benefits, or working conditions, either with or without a union. And so that's what ultimately happened in this Morales versus Home Depot case. And it's very similar to this situation in particular with respect to no tech for apartheid. Somewhat similarly, UAW Local 4811, who's the largest union of academic workers, is also filing an unfair labor practice charge after the university used the Los Angeles Police Department on its protesters. They had a strike vote, said that, quote, the use and sanction of violent force to curtail peaceful protest is an attack on free speech and the right to demand change, and the university must sit down with students, unions, and campus organizations to negotiate rather than escalate. Specifically, it says that it's changing policies unilaterally in response to the protests without bargaining. And those are workplace policies. I think that this is a very interesting look, and I can't wait to take a look at this one in specifics, because these aren't the conditions of employment, right? As far as I know, that these employees, UAW Local 4811, were not on the job, so to speak, when they were conducting the protests. But they filed an unfair labor practice charge as well with respect to how they've been, quote, changing their policies towards protests. How the University of California, Los Angeles, has changed their policies towards protests. So now we look at next steps. These particular situations, specifically the University of California, as well as the Google campus, will now go to administrative judge for the National Labor Relations Board. And as I've talked about quite frequently, the National Labor Relations Board is completely dependent on the president at hand. It is handpicked by the president, and it's one of those situations where this is an unelected bureaucratic body that both makes laws and then enforces them. And their enforcement and making of the laws go back and forth with the political winds of the presidency. And that poses some serious problems for human resources professionals, because they're not able to sort of understand where the winds have blown. For example, something that is completely acceptable in 2019 is now unacceptable in 2021, and that's all because of this unelected bureaucratic body. And that's a true problem. It's a true problem for many people to, have a rule of law and then be beholden to it, right? I actually firmly believe, based on the current National Labor Relations Board and the further politicization of the board, especially in the last 20 years, I actually think that they may rule in favor of the Google protesters. I guess we'll see what happens. I'm really interested in the outcome of this one, and we'll be patiently watching, and I'll have updates when they do come. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next video. Bye, guys.